Outputting our coverage. It's what we do.
That's all we do every Thursday
At 5:30.
College football.
Mountain West Conference.
Doesn't matter.
SEC
Is all that matters.
Nick Saban
Is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all. Let's start the show.
All right, welcome in once again to the Outputting Our Coverage show. A lot has happened since our last show. Life got in the way last week.
Just happens sometimes.
We're not able to bring you the utmost in enjoyment that we normally do every Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, depending on how the mood strikes us.
That's right.
We have been a little bit inconsistent, but we're just trying to, in the words of recruits, shock the world.
That's right.
Each week.
You know, we're just putting our feelers out, seeing what works best for us, what works best for you.
I just need the best situation for my family every week.
That's right.
You know?
Oh, speaking of that, if you have not already, you have got to go check out Andy's blog on our WordPress, outputtingourcoverage.wordpress.com. Absolutely hilarious about what if real life was like recruiting. Do you want to say a couple words about that blog?
Yeah, it's, I was thinking about it the other day when the whole Reuben Foster saga went down. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just normal recruiting craziness, players seeking attention and drama. And I started thinking, what if my life was like this? What if situations I've been through in my life, like choosing a job out of college, choosing a wife,
right?
All those types of things. What if you made those decisions in the same manner that recruits choose their college destination?
And I might be a little biased, but you're not going to find this kind of stuff on ESPN.com. You're not going to find it on Grantland. This is unique stuff. It was hilarious. I laughed in my office and immediately forwarded it to like 8 of our employees.
Yeah, so I think what you should do is go read the article, comment if you will, provide us with some ideas, things that you'd like us to compare it to. We'll do it on the show.
Yeah,
it's a fun new segment.
We'll keep this
us
on the segments. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of recruiting craziness, before we get into ranking the classes and doing all those sorts of things, SEC once again just destroying everyone else in recruiting, but
the way it should be.
There have been some very strange recruiting occurrences this year, as always.
Definitely.
Let's start with maybe the weirdest one so far.
Okay.
Basically, a mother of a recruit, I think his name is Alex Collins,
right,
has run off with his letter of intent.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is correct. It maybe is not the most current. She ran off with the letter of intent.
Okay.
And then they found her and found that letter of intent.
Oh, maybe a little bit of backstory, first of all. Yeah. I believe if a player is not yet 18, is that
21.
Correct? If they're not 21, okay, their parents have to sign as well.
Have to sign.
All right, so you got to be in agreement with your parents on where you want to go.
Right. So he has been a Miami verbal commit for a long time. He's also entertained Wisconsin, Florida, and Arkansas. Really kind of likes Brett Bielema's offense, and so at the last second, like most recruits do, he swapped over and said he wants to become a Razorback.
He flipped, as it's called in the business.
They got him to flip. So his mother was not too happy about that and came up to school and stole his letter of intent and ran away with it. They couldn't find her for a long time. They found her today, and one small problem, she says she's not going to sign the letter of intent.
And she's lawyered up now, right?
And she has lawyered up, and she's now in litigation because Alex Collins is now officially an Arkansas signed commitment because his dad signed the papers.
Oh, it doesn't have to be both parents.
Doesn't have to be both.
Well, I guess
in
in a lot of cases it'd be tough to do that.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the father signed it. He's an Arkansas recruit. The mother has gotten some lawyers for impending litigation. I'm not sure what she stands on here, but right now he's an Arkansas commit.
Yeah, I'd be interested to watch this one play out, actually, just to see how this might change the recruiting game going forward. But, I mean, this isn't the first time that recruits and their parents have disagreed.
Right.
I remember a couple of years ago, Cyrus Guanjo actually announced on signing day on TV that he was going to Auburn. His parents weren't on board with that decision.
They wanted him to go to LSU, right?
He went to Alabama.
Yeah.
And he's there now. His letter of intent came in later that day to Alabama.
Right. There was a recruit, I think it was last year, whose mother cried on national TV because she wanted him to go to LSU.
I mean, to me, maybe there are some parents that are doing this legitimately, but a lot of times I think the parents are being worse than the kids as far as being attention
definitely.
seekers.
Definitely.
They're not making the right decisions for their. It's interesting to watch the different ways that these kids handle, and really it's not even the way the kids handle it, it's the way that their parents allow the kids to handle it.
Right. I mean, the perfect story is Taquan Bowers yesterday. I mean, he was an Auburn commit first, and then the last 2 days or a week he flipped to Florida and was a verbal commit. Mixed reports around 10 o'clock yesterday whether they got his letter of intent or not, and then out of nowhere LSU reporting that they have his letter of intent. Just it's out of the blue.
Yeah, and then you take a guy like Reuben Foster. We mentioned him.
Man.
Originally committed to Alabama, I'd say about a little over a year ago. And then at some point, I guess a couple months ago, he flipped his commitment.
Before the football season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was a while back. Flipped his commitment to Auburn. Actually got an Auburn tattoo. That's been pretty famous at this point. Auburn folks feeling pretty confident that he was going to sign, even after the coaching staff upheaval and changes and all that. Reuben taking his official visit to Auburn the last weekend before signing day, usually a good sign for that school. And then all out of the blue, Reuben Foster leaves on Saturday, right during the middle of his official visit, and ends up in Tuscaloosa that night. That's crazy.
Right.
You don't see that happen very much.
You don't, and the more and more these stories come out, especially with that happening, and then a lot of the Ole Miss stuff that's kind of coming out of the rumor mills, kind of wondering if in a couple years you're not going to see a lot of penalties handed down by the NCAA.
This stuff's not new, though. I mean, it happens every year.
Hey, every team cheats, just some teams are better at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, and where do you draw the line of cheating? There's things that are probably on the edge, and I think all of the teams are doing those.
Right.
But, you contrast a guy like Reuben Foster, who's back and forth with, I'm not totally familiar with all the Alabama recruits. I'm sure there are some that are the same as what I'm about to describe here, but Carl Lawson, Auburn recruit, 5-star defensive end, just a guy who handled his totally differently. His parents were actually a positive influence on his decision, never actually decommitted after the coaching change, but did take his visits, wasn't a big drama thing about it. He just said, I'm trying to pick a place where if I couldn't play football anymore, I'd still feel comfortable there.
And there's a Michigan quarterback who was like that too.
There
are those
you don't hear those good stories as
Right.
much. I mean, just like college football in general, you don't hear about the players who are doing the right things most of the time. You just hear about the ones that get arrested. But it's just it's such an interesting contrast to see all these the wide variety of recruiting tales, I guess.
I agree with you. Do we have time for two more tales?
Yeah,
I think two more. All right,
it's just so much goodness.
The first one I want to bring up, and I really want to get your opinion on this before I weigh in. Alabama, everybody says, has the number one class. We'll kind of get a little more in depth with that in the next segment. But they signed 4 running backs of at least 4-star caliber. They already have T.J. Yeldon. Everybody knows about that. They've got Fowler, and they have D. Hart. That's 7 running backs. What in the world, this is a 2-part question. A, is Alabama doing with 7 running backs? And B, what are the running backs thinking going into that deep backfield where they might not get a chance to play all 4 years? I mean, Yeldon's just a sophomore this coming year.
I think there's a couple things at play here. Number one, I think some of those guys that are already there probably won't be there much longer. I would take D. Hart as an example. Got hurt. I would not be surprised to see him end up not playing football anymore.
I agree with that, yeah.
So attrition happens. You can make arguments of whether some of that is encouraged or not, but I think a lot of it is the success that Alabama's had over the past couple of years with multiple running backs in the backfield, and you see the guys that have waited their turn have still been successful and made it to the NFL.
Right.
That Nick Saban can sell that at this point.
And he does like to use at least 3 running backs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, Nick Saban and Alabama, they're going to try as hard as they can to make sure these guys don't go to other schools. It's better to have them sitting on the bench at your school for them to be playing other places, and they have the results in the recent past to be able to sell the possibility of success.
And we used to see this a lot more before the scholarship limitations.
Yeah. I mean, Bear Bryant was the master of this.
Oh, right. He used to get people all the time just to keep them from another school. But I I'm really kind of confused by this. I understand maybe what Alabama's thinking. They like having a stable, but they really had some needs in the offensive line department. They've got to get that more shored up. I thought they could have gone after maybe some secondary players and save some scholarship spots, but they got some talent in the backfield. I don't know if that's exactly what they needed.
I mean, maybe it comes back to hurt them at some point. Like you said, with the scholarship limits now, you can't just go and sign all of the best available players anymore. You have to sign guys that fit your needs.
But hey, they did.
You need to balance that against, signing the guys with the most talent.
That's
too.
right.
So,
they did get Cole Mazza. You ever heard of him?
I do not know who
He's
that is.
the number 3 long snapper.
Oh,
in the
man.
country.
That's the Tommy Tuberville book of signing long snappers right there.
Yeah,
That's good stuff.
All right, there's one more story I want to see if you know. Do you know who Miles Crosby is? And I'm going to go away from that so you can't see it. Miles Crosby.
He's not a hockey player, is he?
He is not a hockey player. He actually is a recruit who just signed his letter of intent, like a lot of recruits did, for the Mustangs. However, he's giving up a pretty prolific career in another field by playing college football. Any guesses as to what field that would be?
I'm gonna take a wild one and say it's not astrophysics.
No, he is one of the world's top models, male models.
Really?
He is with Calvin Klein. A lot of people apparently they have model ranking systems, which
there's rivals for models.
I want to figure out how we can get into this.
They have star rankings and everything.
Right, he is ranked by just some random body out there. 11th best male model in the world right now.
Oh, wow.
And
he's a 5-star.
He's a 5-star recruit. A lot of people say that he would make at least 6 figures if he were to leave school and go into the modeling career. However, he is going to play tight end at SMU. And they say he probably won't even get to play until he's a senior. Just doesn't really have the natural skills to play the tight end position. And he's going to play in an obscure place like SMU.
Yeah, that's a dumb decision to me.
What do you make of that decision?
I don't know. I mean, if I looked good, I would probably not be playing football. I mean, if that's what you got to go on, there's a pretty good chance it's going to get messed up.
Probably wouldn't be doing radio either.
I probably wouldn't. I would not have a face for radio at that
right.
point. But yeah, that's a strange story for sure.
So anybody out there who sees Miles Crosby, just tell him he's an idiot.
You don't think he's going to be getting some trash talk on the field, do you?
Oh, most definitely. Is he going to get some trash talk on the field?
I mean, nah, the other players, they don't care about that.
Yes, they do. yeah. This guy will get ripped apart on the field. He'll get ripped apart on the practice field.
Oh, his teammates are. I'm sure they're just already, the upperclassmen there, I'm sure they're excited about him getting there. They can't wait.
Definitely.
Can't wait. I'm sure you can't wait for us to get back on the other side of outputting our coverage. We're going to break down the signing classes in the SEC. We'll let you know how Alabama and Auburn did. Hit some key spots on some of the other teams as well. It's a crowded list at the top, man. It's mostly filled with SEC powers, so definitely want to stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Outputting Our Coverage.
It's time for SEC preview. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, 12 can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong. And Missouri and Texas A&M as well. Yeah, SEC preview. Here we go.
All right, we are back here on Outputting Our Coverage. Let's go through some recruiting classes here, David. Where do you want to start? You want to start with Alabama?
Let's start with the rankings a little bit.
Okay.
We were talking about this off air. The SEC domination is just ridiculous. Here is your top 11. Alabama, Florida, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Michigan, LSU, Texas A&M, Florida State, Georgia, and Auburn. And in case you missed all that, that is 7 SEC teams in the top 11 in recruiting classes. That's that's pure domination.
That's pretty ridiculous. You have to wonder, I've been mentioning this a few times, at some point, is the SEC not just going to so far surpass all the other teams that it's not even going to be competitive? Or are we already at that point?
I think you just look at the national championship race and you see we're already there. I mean, Notre Dame was supposed to be the one to break the cycle and they got destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
You just can't compete if you don't have the same caliber of players.
And I don't think the playoffs will change it. I'm sorry. I think the playoffs will probably make it... we'll probably see 2 SEC teams in there, depending on the rules.
Yeah.
So...
All right, let's start Alabama, the consensus number 1 class, according to all the services, which the more you look at them, there's pretty significant differences in the way that these guys are rated and the way these classes are rated. But I think it's pretty safe to say Alabama had an excellent class.
They did.
Again.
A lot of number ones and twos in the position. I think there's probably a lot of overhyped kids in this class, but they're definitely going to have some players in here.
So do you think they did a good job of addressing needs overall?
No, I don't think they did. I think they got the best players available. I mean, there's always been that conversation in the NFL with the draft. Who do you get? Do you get somebody who fits your need, or do you get the best available? In the NFL, I agree. Get the best available player, not necessarily fits your need. College is a different story. You've got to fill the needs on your football team because nobody else is going to do it. There's no free agency period that you can go get somebody. If you just look at the first maybe 15 of these players, you don't see any offensive linemen. The first one you see is Grant Hill from Huntsville, Alabama. I actually got to see him play this year. He's going to need some work before he starts. I mean, a really good recruit. He's got the size. Doesn't really have the speed or the conditioning to play right away. And then you've got a couple JUCOs in here. I really think they could have focused a little more on the offensive line and the secondary, which is where they're going to need some help. That's where a lot of their players are going to leave. Kind of focused more on the offensive side. Got a lot of athletes, some defensive ends, defensive tackles, and linebackers. But, I mean, strong class. Got a couple quarterbacks in there for when McCarron leaves, but I think there's a couple of needs that they probably overlooked.
Who's one guy, that people may not know about, but you think is an underrated player in this class?
An underrated player? Let me start with the overrated player. I think D. Liner, defensive tackle from Muscle Shoals. I actually saw him play twice this year. I actually saw some of the film on him before Hartzell played him, and I was not impressed. He's undisciplined, gets a lot of penalties drawn on him. He plays very high. He does not have a good explosion off the ball. Likes to run around completely high. When you start facing the elite offensive linemen of the SEC, you can't get away with that. The difference between like a D-liner and when Jadeveon Clowney came out last year, he already had a lot of the fundamentals taken care of. So D-liner could turn it around. I'm not seeing it yet. I think he's probably the most overrated player. Maybe one of the more underrated players I think is going to be, what if I said Cole Mazza right now? This is all I'm saying.
Take away your microphone.
No, I think Alvin Kamara. I think it's hard to underrate a player at 4 stars with an 88 ranking, but this kid is dynamic. He's explosive. He's one of those Georgia running backs who just seems to light the scene on fire right out. I think this guy could be a really good number 3 back, work his way, even maybe past to Derrick Henry, who's more of a bigger, more brutal back. A 2 or 3 back that just gives you that explosion on the outside that would be a nice change up from the power running game that Alabama's used to. So maybe even pretty good in the passing game as a slot receiver, but I think he's going to sneak up and maybe get some playing time this year.
Okay. Yeah, even in that crowded backfield. You think a freshman sneaking up there?
I think so, or even maybe in the special teams. I think that's probably where he might have a better fit coming in. Like I said, even maybe the slot receiver, although Alabama seems to have a lot of receivers now too, really focusing on the skill positions.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to watch. It seems to me Alabama's success over the past few years has been in controlling the trenches, especially the offensive line.
Definitely.
You got to make sure you can keep that up. And like you said, not a big focus on the offensive line in this class, but what's the situation? They've got some guys kind of waiting in the wings already to take over.
You got to hope so. They didn't look that great when they had their chances this year in blowout games, although you're playing in blowout games
right.
with all number 2s. Who knows really what's going to happen with that? I think that's why I'm not a huge fan of evaluating these guys right now. We got to wait until closer to the season to see what's going to happen with them.
All right, let's talk about Auburn real quick. I think by all accounts, Auburn did much better than expected with the coaching change. One of my biggest fears of hiring Gus Malzahn was that this recruiting class was basically going to be a lost effort. I think Gene Chiswick probably, if he had stayed, could have put together maybe a little bit better class, maybe somewhere closer to top 5. That's definitely not for sure, but Auburn within the top 15 at least, very close to the top 10. I think that's much better than anybody expected to see.
I was shocked.
Certainly defensive line, a big priority in this class, and that's a big priority for Auburn in general. You heard us mention many times on the show last year that The defensive line play for Auburn this past year was absolutely atrocious, and really that's where your defense starts.
Oh, yeah.
If you can't control the line, there's not a whole lot you can do.
Just underperformed all year consistently.
Yeah, I mean there have been some guys, I mean, to be fair, Auburn has some formerly highly rated recruits playing at the defensive line position already. Those guys just haven't really panned out so far. So maybe you chalk that up to coaching. Maybe you chalk it up to bad evaluations. So I think it's dangerous to just say that, we got Carl Lawson and Montravius Adams and Elijah Daniel and these highly rated guys coming in that's fixing the problems. I'd want to pump the brakes a little bit on that one because you've had some highly rated guys before. You're going to have to see something different. But you also have a new coaching staff now, so you hope that maybe that player development can start happening. I mentioned Montravius Adams. I think that was a pretty big signing day win for Auburn, the number 2 defensive tackle in the country out of Georgia, a guy who is probably ready to compete for some playing time this year. Another linchpin of this class on the offensive side of the ball, a couple quarterbacks coming in this class. Jeremy Johnson out of Carver in Montgomery, probably the most well-known guy who'd been committed to Auburn for a while.
Right.
Kind of fits that mold of what you'd expect out of a Gus Malzahn quarterback. But a wild card to me is Nick Marshall, a JUCO player listed as an athlete by some folks, was initially recruited into Georgia and played defensive back there before getting kicked off the team for some off-the-field issues, kind of similar to a Cam Newton situation.
Right.
Went to junior college this last year, played quarterback, and did an excellent job there coming in. I'll be real interested to watch and see how he does in the quarterback race because I'm a little apprehensive that somebody like Jeremy Johnson, a true freshman, can come in and really win the starting quarterback position. But when you take a JUCO guy like Nick Marshall, I think he might have a legit shot.
I think Auburn had a little bit of success with the JUCO quarterback
a
while ago.
Yeah, now I'm not going to go so far as saying this guy's the next Cam Newton. I definitely don't think that's the case, but I don't think you need a Cam Newton necessarily to make Gus Malzahn's offense work. You need somebody better than what you got last year.
Right, so. And I think the coolest thing about Nick Marshall that I've seen so far is that if you go to ESPN.com and look up Nick Marshall, he is listed as a QB/defensive tackle. So that is impressive.
That's got to be incorrect.
6'2", 210.
I'm thinking
quarterback /
I'm thinking that's. I've seen him listed as an athlete.
I think that's defensive back. But
yeah, I think that's what they meant to do.
Everybody go check that out. Why they haven't fixed their error. So who do you see as an overrated guy maybe on the recruiting list?
I'm thinking maybe as far as overrated guys go. Maybe one of the wide receivers, a guy like Ernest Robinson, was a guy who'd gotten a lot of hype coming in, kind of underperformed during his high school season this year. A lot of his hype, I think, came from some of the camps.
Right.
He's good in those one-on-one situations, but he's not necessarily the speediest guy, not necessarily the tallest guy. He's a guy I think might not end up living up to the hype quite as much.
Do you have somebody who's undervalued?
Underrated guy, I'm going to go with Peyton Barber, running back from Alpharetta, was committed to Ole Miss,
right.
Flipped to Auburn at the last second. He's a guy that I think kind of got undervalued a little bit this year, was hurt for most of his senior season, didn't get to play. But if you go watch this guy's video, I think he can really be a difference maker. Auburn got some good running backs to complement Trey Mason, the guy they already have. There's a JUCO guy coming in, Cameron Artis-Payne. You have Peyton Barber as well, and then you also got Jonathan Ford, who's choosing between Auburn and Tennessee, another 4-star running back. So,
and hey, you got to love that Auburn's sticking with the tradition. Got a number 1 kicker, so
yeah,
like you're gonna be good there.
Certainly,
6'5", that's a big old guy.
Yeah, and I think a punter is going to gray shirt as well. So special teams hopefully will be part of the situation there. But overall, a pretty good class. Definitely focused on some needs. I think a place where they might be a little bit light is linebacker. Obviously, missing out on Reuben Foster might hurt there.
Well, I think Cameron Toney, we talked a little bit about him off the air. I saw him play at Huntsville High. He's playing as an inside linebacker in high school. I really think he's probably more of an outside linebacker in college. He's got the build at 225 to play inside, but his speed is something else, and he plays very ferociously. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is high impact, and I think he's got a chance to come in there and maybe make an impact. He's rated as an 80. I think he'd probably play a little higher than that. I think especially if he gets some good development, you could see him definitely work his way in, maybe become an every down nickelback, or maybe at least work his way in if he's not the starting outside linebacker, maybe mid-season.
Yeah, I think a lot of Auburn folks kind of banking on the fact that better defensive line play will help the linebacker play as well. We'll just have to see how that one shakes out. Let's look at some other teams here.
Okay, well, we talked about them a little bit when we were talking about the flip. And the flip went the other way for the most part yesterday. Ole Miss, where did they come from?
Yeah, Ole Miss.
The number 5 recruiting class in the country. Why? I mean, why are kids going to Ole Miss?
I think a lot of people are asking questions, wondering if there's some shady dealings going on at Ole Miss, and whenever a school you don't expect to do well does well in recruiting, those types of rumors are going to happen until we see something more. I'm going to try to stay away from that. But
well, Kim Dichie, I mean, you understand that his brother plays there,
sure,
leading tackler on Ole Miss this year. That makes sense. Yeah. But some of these other recruits, nobody saw Laramie Tunzel going, the number one offensive tackle. Nobody saw him going to Ole Miss. They got some surprise recruits, but man, as you scroll through this,
it's a pretty impressive list.
It's and they got a lot of different positions. I mean, you're talking about defensive end, offensive tackle, wide receiver, safety, quarterback, running back. They got a lot of depth, if nothing else, this year.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the highest ranked recruiting class that Ole Miss has ever had.
Yeah.
The question is really what happens from here. I mean, obviously those guys don't fit right in. Well, some of them may fit right in this year and get you better than where you were. But if Ole Miss really starts to have some success, I think the question has to be asked, how long does Hugh Freeze stick around there? Does the fact that he kind of has a history with Ole Miss help him stick around longer than would happen otherwise? Or
it depends. I mean, it depends on who comes knocking at his door. If it's maybe another upstart program, yeah, I mean, he's going to stick at Ole Miss. But if a big program comes with big money, he's gone. I mean, I don't think Ole Miss can keep him.
And see, you don't know. Maybe the players are factoring that into their decision, but from their perspective, it seems like a risky move to put all your eggs in the Ole Miss basket, knowing that, I mean, traditionally, if there is success, even, it's not going to last very long.
Right. I really think that what Ole Miss did, probably better than anybody in the recruiting classes, at least in the top 10, is they really worked on depth. That was one of Ole Miss's big problems last year. They were in a lot of games and couldn't finish. They were just tuckered out. We talked preseason about Ole Miss not having any depth, especially up front. They solved a lot of their depth issues. I mean, they are going to have players who, if nothing else, are going to be really good twos, ready to work in and out. So I was really impressed with Ole Miss's.
Let's go to the other side of Mississippi.
Okay.
Ole Miss, great recruiting class. Mississippi State,
that was just terrible.
Disappointment.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Chris Jones, who is going back and forth between Mississippi State and Ole Miss, a pretty highly regarded defensive end. But it gets pretty light pretty quick after that.
Right. I mean, you got a couple receivers, but is that really your biggest need right now? I think you got to be pretty disappointed with that. Got another quarterback. No line. Again, we've talked about how the line is really the linchpin, especially with Mississippi State, who likes to be physical. Not a whole lot of defensive line or offensive line talent. I mean, you got to go way down to number 43rd defensive tackle and Ulrich Jones coming out of Oxford until you really get to a quality lineman outside of Chris Jones. So just really not impressed with that recruiting class.
Yeah, I mean, how quickly fortunes have turned in the state of Mississippi.
Definitely.
I mean, you start out 7-0 at Mississippi State, and here you are with Ole Miss. I mean, it's rough.
Yeah.
Pretty rough.
All right, I want to go to Arkansas because this is really kind of the lightning rod team between the two of us. We disagree a lot on Arkansas's future and their coach and the direction they're probably heading in. I think Arkansas, while not overwhelming, had a really solid recruiting class for Bielema. I think they kind of developed to where they can get into his offensive scheme quicker. They got Alex Collins, who's really going to help.
Sure.
They got Hunter Henry, a great tight end. They need somebody blocking on that outside to really get a good seal. They got some offensive tackle or offensive linemen They got solid up in the middle in defense with a lot of linebackers and defensive tackles. I think it was a pretty solid class here. Even though it's not ranked really highly, I think they filled their need just as well as a lot of other teams.
Yeah, but I mean, they're going after the same kind of players that Alabama, LSU are going after, and obviously here they're not getting this high a caliber of guys.
Well,
so
of course
how's that going to work for them?
It's going to work just like Ole Miss is going to work for them. They've got to win this year. If they can win this year, they can have the same kind of class Ole Miss is having this year. A lot of kids like to see success, and especially with Bielema, he's going to be able to recruit two things. He's going to be able to recruit tight ends. He's going to be able to recruit running backs because they have a history of success in his program.
And offensive linemen.
Linemen as well, because
you see success historically there.
He can say, I have sent these guys to the NFL.
Yep.
So.
All right. Let's take a look at Florida real quick. Kind of a sneaky good class for Florida.
Number 2, and they're sneaky.
Yeah, I mean, people not really talking about Florida's class a whole lot. To me, they filled a big need at running back. We've talked time and time again about, Florida struggling at running back. Mike Gillislee for them this year a little bit better than what they've had, but they got the, according to ESPN, number 1 running back in the country,
right?
Kelvin Taylor. That to me alone is a huge need for them.
He is special. He really kind of fits that offense. I think he's going to be a good fit. I think bigger than that is the fact, just look at how many defensive players that they lost this year. They are definitely replacing a lot of those.
Absolutely.
I mean, number 1 cornerback, number 3 outside linebackers, number 6 defensive tackle, the number 6 and 7 safeties. I mean, number 5 outside linebacker. They are filling a lot of gaps in this. I think Florida's defense comes back, and they're going to come back ready. Another thing that kind of goes under the radar, and we haven't really talked about a whole lot, the wide receivers at Florida have been bad for a while. They got a couple good wide receivers, but I think the biggest pickup that Florida got was Joker Phillips. Coming in and being their wide receiver coach. I think that was probably their biggest win in the recruiting season, was getting him in.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of good things coming up for Florida.
Absolutely. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Any other classes in particular you want to go through?
Well, yeah, we'll just touch on Missouri. Was probably the biggest disappointment in the SEC. Barely finished in the top 50, just terrible. Kentucky, as you would expect, not very good. Vandy actually had a really good class, especially considering that they're Vandy. Finished in the top 25, they're 22nd. Finished ahead of a lot of SEC teams. Had 27 recruits. When's the last time you could say Vandy filled out their roster?
It's impressive. Yeah, Jordan Cunningham, a highly rated wide receiver that they got in there. Not a whole lot of other really highly rated, highly known guys, but a lot of very solid players. I mean,
Vandy
four-star
players.
Yeah, I mean, guys that a lot of other schools would be very happy to have. So certainly filling some needs there. People are starting to believe in the James Franklin magic, I guess. When's the last time that Vandy had a higher rated class than Tennessee?
Right, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And Tennessee, I thought they would do better. I got to say, they're probably disappointing.
Tennessee, they finished second place in a lot of battles.
They did.
I mean, they were up there for Carl Lawson. They were up there for Von Bell.
And you got to point to their coaching hire for a lot of that. I mean, you really kind of underwhelmed the recruits with who you went out and got. They don't know who they are.
There's not a lot of excitement there.
Not a lot of excitement. So I think that has to do a lot with it.
All right. Well, that's the recruiting world as we see it. That's about all we can handle. We still feel a little bit dirty talking about high school kids. It's just weird.
Yeah,
in the end, it's just, like you said, we don't really know what they're going to do yet. It's fun to look at this stuff. It's something to pass the time until the games get here, but this whole concept of a recruiting national championship and things like that, to me, seems a little bit silly.
Yeah, it is. It's entirely silly.
But other silliness going on. The Super Bowl this past week. A little bit of crazy happenings there. We're going to take a quick break. We'll recap some of that, give you our opinions on what happened in the supposedly biggest game in the country right here on the other side of outputting our coverage.
I'm alright. Nobody but about me. Why you got to give me a fight? Can't you just let it be? I'm alright.
Welcome back to outputting our coverage.
You know what I just thought about?
What's that?
We probably should have played the night when the lights went out in Georgia.
Oh, that would have been genius. So chances that New Orleans gets another Super Bowl anytime soon?
I think so, pretty high.
Really?
Yeah.
Even with the power outage?
No, I don't think that's a problem. I think that's a fixable problem. I think that the atmosphere is so great.
It is.
It's
a
welcoming
unique place.
It's a very unique place.
Yeah.
Everybody loves to go there. I think the chances are higher that New Orleans will get 7 more Super Bowls before New Jersey gets another one.
Chances that a hurricane wipes out New Orleans before the next Super Bowl higher than the chances of New Orleans not getting another Super Bowl due to the NFL.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the power outage, but the game in general, I have to admit, as a non-NFL fan, I did watch the whole thing. I was very entertained. It was a great game.
It was a great
Very
game.
good game.
I was worried in the first half that it would end up in a blowout. I was very excited to see San Francisco make a run. I think it was a good game. A lot of controversy with the referees. I think they let them play a lot.
Yeah, they did. There were a couple borderline calls, but nothing, people trying to make some of those pass interference calls out to be egregious mistakes. I don't think so.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. In case you didn't see it, the last play of the game that mattered was a fade into the corner of the end zone on 4th and goal from the 6-yard line. Crabtree definitely did get held. I mean, the defender had his arms all the way around, was grabbing Jersey. He got held. He released, no flag. So you want to call that a 15 or a half a distance and an automatic first down, and that would have changed the game. I understand that. However, flip the field. It's the 4th quarter. Time is running out. It's the possession right before this last possession. Baltimore has the ball inside the 20 in San Francisco territory. 3rd down and long. Joe Flacco rolls out on a pass, and he throws the ball out of bounds, just gets rid of it as he's going out of bounds. The defensive tackle for San Francisco hits Joe Flacco 3 yards out of bounds. Clearly hit him out of bounds. That was not called. So that's another half the distance of the goal, first down. They score a touchdown instead of a field goal. You're not even talking about that.
Yeah.
So
it's a slippery slope when you start trying to play the what-if game with referee calls. I mean, to me, that the last play there, San Francisco trying to score, I'm not even sure that, had he not been held or whatever you want to call that, the ball would have been catchable.
Well,
I'm not sure that it would have been.
You say that, but I think it was in a pretty similar spot to the Pittsburgh-Arizona game, Super Bowl a while back, where just a tremendous catch was made in the corner.
Yeah.
He could have, I don't know, but I think if you're San Francisco, you really got to look at the play calling and be disappointed. You're 1st and goal from the 6.
Absolutely.
You have been pushing Baltimore off the ball and having what you want in the running game. You run once out of 4 plays, and I think that one thing that I never heard talked about on radio, I didn't hear it on TV all week, it's the biggest problem for San Francisco, and if I was a San Francisco fan, I would be kicking myself for this. You watched it, right?
Yeah, I did.
3rd down and goal from the 6. They just had an incomplete pass on a short slant to Crabtree. San Francisco sees a weakness in the defensive line. They call a change out. They get the snap off, and after 3 steps, you can see Colin Kaepernick has the corner to walk in for a touchdown. However, a timeout had to be called because they let the play clock run down and they couldn't get the snap off.
Inexcusable.
That's a touchdown.
At the highest level of football, there's no excuse for that.
I mean, in the first play of the game, they lined up in an illegal formation.
Yeah.
You can't do that when you've got 2 weeks to prepare.
No excuse for that type of thing. At times, Kaepernick seemed a little bit rattled in this game. He made, to his credit, after the power outage, he came back, got some stuff done. But, an interesting contrast, once again, between the offensive styles. You see Joe Flacco pretty calm, cool, and collected, making some underrated plays with his feet to keep things alive.
Oh, yeah.
Really, I still think overall at the NFL level, that type of offense is more effective, maybe more predictable, or consistent than, this new pistol type of offense. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we'll see some success with the pistol. I think it works for certain players. I think it helps get players out of college into the NFL quicker.
Right.
I think you can still have success with it. You saw times where San Francisco was extremely successful, but you have to have the right scheme around it. You have to have very powerful, big offensive linemen in front of the quarterback and running backs, and you need a quarterback who's dynamic. And the biggest thing you need is a quarterback who can throw the ball.
Right.
I mean, Colin Kaepernick can sling it.
Sure.
So
sure.
You need somebody who can still throw the ball. But I can see it being an offense that would work. Will it stick around? I mean, I don't know. We'll just have to see on that. My question to you is, what do you think about what Joe Flacco said on the last play game? Have you seen this that
Yes.
came out? Okay.
I think it's funny. I mean, come on.
Okay, but what if it had actually... He was dead serious. If you have not seen it, Joe Flacco went around to the sideline on the last play of the game, which was a Ravens free kick because they got a safety intentionally to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Joe Flacco wants to win the Super Bowl. He's desperate to win the Super Bowl. And so he starts telling people on the sideline that if the San Francisco receiver back there, again, Junior, breaks away and is running down their sideline, just tackle him. Off of the sideline, just jump off the sideline and tackle him, which sounds like a great idea. However, the rules actually state that if that happens, the referee can award San Francisco an automatic touchdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
That would have finished the game. So what do you think about Flacco? Do you think it's just all in good fun now since it didn't happen?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that much about the guy.
Right.
It's hard for me to tell whether he was serious or not. I mean, maybe he's taking lessons from Ray Lewis. But,
Yeah.
You can't deal in hypotheticals, David.
Okay. Well, all right. So
Not that we ever do that.
let's do a hypothetical since you just said it. Joe Flacco. Now I know you don't watch a ton of the NFL, but you saw the Super Bowl. Should Joe Flacco be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL?
Absolutely not. I mean, he was okay, but he certainly doesn't mean as much to his team as Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Drew Brees or any of those guys.
Okay. Should Joe Flacco be in the top 5 of quarterback pay rate?
Yeah, I think probably top 5. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to think of, besides those 3 guys I just named, I can't think of 2 other guys that are necessarily better than Joe Flacco. Can you?
See, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady,
Aaron
Drew
Rodgers,
Brees,
add him in there too.
and Matt Ryan.
I don't know about Matt Ryan. I put Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco about equal.
Okay.
Right now, maybe
We're-
tie for 5th.
Colin Kaepernick is too
No.
young. We haven't seen enough
No.
from him. Okay, I can probably agree with that. Phillip Rivers just hasn't produced
No.
consistently enough. So,
Yeah.
you're probably right.
I think that's about right. I mean, Joe Flacco, a solid performer. I mean, really, once you get past the top 4 quarterbacks, there's a little bit of a drop off.
There is.
I think you could say.
Yeah.
So the blackout. You think it was a conspiracy, or you
No.
think it was an accident?
No, I think it was a total accident. I don't think anything unintentional happened there. I understand the delay. I mean, those kind of lights, you have to turn them off.
Sure.
They've got to cool down a little bit before they'll come back up. So a lot of people are talking about that. I do think that this is more of a good plug for a smarter electrical system. If you haven't seen it, go to popsci.com, popularscience.com, and read their latest article about a smarter electrical grid. And it just makes a ton of sense. You just have more electrical checks and balances. You split it up differently, where this kind of stuff just does not happen. So it actually saves money.
I thought it was probably one of the most awkward 40 minutes of sports television I've ever seen.
Definitely.
It's funny to watch the announcers running around with nothing to say. I mean, I can pretty much guarantee if you put me and David there for 40 minutes in the middle of the Super Bowl, it would have been a fun time. A fun time for everybody.
Definitely. That would have been memorable. But,
but they don't ask us to do those things.
They should.
Yeah, they really should.
By the way, whoever's watching or listening to this, we are available for the next Super Bowl.
Yes,
if you want us
absolutely.
to come out and do that in case of a blackout.
Yeah, we'll definitely be better than Shannon Sharp.
Did you see the rumors that Bain actually caused the blackout?
I did see that.
Yeah, that's still a
Attention,
possibility.
citizens of New Orleans.
That's right.
Yeah, that was terrible. Anyways, we will be off again next week. Got to take care of some life-related things. Not a whole lot, honestly, going on in sports after this anyway. But we'll be back the week after, recapping the surely out-of-nowhere crazy news that will probably be coming our way.
Oh, definitely. And then, of course, college basketball.
Yeah,
gonna
it's
be
happening.
Getting close to tourney time.
Yep, tourney time coming up. Prepare yourself for that. Until then, sweet dreams, everyone. We'll be back with outputting our coverage the week after next. We'll see you then.